Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Profit Minds podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephen 𝐏𝐫𝐶, creator of the Profit Minds Growth System, a unique blend of profit growth, productivity acceleration, and building robust business process for scale. In every episode, I interview entrepreneurs and small business owners from around the world with a unique story to tell. You can find the show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. Well, hello, everyone. Today, my guest is Chris March, a COO turned executive coach and advisor. And today, we're going to talk about how leadership is changing in 2026.
Steve, thanks for having me on today. I'm excited for the conversation.
Yeah. So tell us your story. How did you get to be an executive coach and advisor?
I'll try to keep it short. Growing up in Australia, I wanted to be a professional basketball player. So, which is abnormal growing up in the 80s as a child. Typically, you play rugby league, cricket, swimming, rugby union. Some of you are hopefully familiar with the sports that I'm sharing around rugby union, rugby league. And then I was extremely passionate about basketball, and I thought I was going to play professionally. Wasn't really focused on schooling at all or my education at that point. I wasn't emotionally mature enough, and those dreams didn't pan out, unfortunately. So I then decided, as most people do in Australia, as a rite of passage, once I turned old enough and spent a couple of years out of school, I worked in real estate for a few years once that dream had come crashing down from a basketball perspective, and I decided to jump on a plane to the UK with a friend when I was 22, I think I was 22, 23 at that point, no real plan, and ended up staying for 2 years in London, had the incredible experience of traveling throughout Europe, and that really ignited a passion which has really encapsulated who I am today is through travel. Upon my
Hmm.
return to moving back to Sydney, I decided to start working in the travel industry because I had planned most of the trips throughout that experience through Europe. We went to the Running of the Bulls, Beer Fest, Ibiza, Greek islands, to name a few. And I came back and I thought this is something that really excites me. So came back to Sydney, started working in the travel industry, started working in a boutique brick and mortar travel agency. Did that for about a year, and during that initial time upon my return to Sydney, I realized that I'd had the travel bug and I needed to keep moving. And at
Hmm.
that point in time, Vancouver, British Columbia was voted one of the best places in the world to live. So in 2009, I set my sights on moving to Vancouver, British Columbia, really with no other plan than let's just keep this traveling thing going. I really enjoy this. I'm having fun. Continued working in the travel industry, working for Flight Center. And then fast forward to 2016, I've been there for 7 years, started working my way into more senior operational roles. The company offered to sponsor me. And I said, I really enjoy it here. Can I stay? And I said, yes. So 2017, I was relocated to Toronto, continued to work my way up into more senior roles. And then the pandemic hit in 2020.
Ah.
Yes. For anyone who is familiar with the pandemic, it's a long
There's,
time
there
ago
was there
now.
was no impact to the travel industry, was there, in the
Ex-
pandemic?
ex- exactly, Steve. So our whole industry was decimated. And as a senior leader at that point, I had a bird's eye view of us making some tough decisions where we had to lay off 90% of our staff.
Wow.
Let me say that again, 90% of our staff. And Canada was highly impacted by the pandemic. If certain pockets, there were certain restrictions, but me being in Ontario, the restrictions were very, very severe. So as the pandemic continued to go on for months, and then a year at that point, we weren't sure if the revenue was ever going to come back. And our organization globally, which held 10,000 employees up until prior pandemic, wasn't sure if we were going to make it through. We were told to start thinking about your plan Bs. We may need to look at investments. So at that point in time, I had the unique opportunity of living solo in a small condo in Toronto to reflect on what did I want to do next if I was forced to pivot into that career. And that's where everything came back to a helping professional. I wanted to move into helping professionals. And that's when I made the pivot into coaching. I first started doing life coaching. 𝐏𝐫𝐸 coaching school was the first step I did into certification. And then I did an executive coaching program the following year. And then I subsequently launched my coaching business in 2022. And fast forward to today, I've had the privilege of coaching hundreds of people globally from Europe to Australia now. And after 17 years of living in Canada, I just recently returned to Australia in April of 2025, spend more time with my family, continue doing that work through my own practice. And I'm also working for a educational institute where we help scale 6, 7, 8, 9-figure founders here in Australia. So it's the combination of what I love doing, advising, coaching, strategy, scaling, coming from an operational lens. So that's what brings me to today, Steve.
Great. Just sort of, if you look overall, what are the
Mm,
biggest leadership challenges that you see in these executives that want to scale their business?
mm. Well, the natural first one, I know we're talking about this offline, and a lot of different owners don't understand, or leaders don't understand how to implement AI. I think there's a
Mm.
lot of people trying to understand what AI is, and when they think of AI, they naturally think of ChatGPT, an end-to-end process where you're using AI that is a generative AI output, and that's how they're using it to help grow their business. In some cases where people are feeling a little bit more competent, there's some level of AI agentic or AI agents that are automating some of those manual tasks. So I think there's still a lot of learning, a lot of apprehension around AI. And I think what I'm seeing as well is that the return of human-centered leadership is, yes, we still have machines and large language models that support that, but we're seeing the return of face-to-face, the need for people to be human-centered. And that is a key part of leadership that is really rising up, is that you can have machines, but you need people to evoke people to step from point A to point B. So that's a big part of it, of what I see. And I also see there's a lot of focus around emotional intelligence. Strategic decision making is also a big one, and also adaptive leadership is a huge one, because things are moving so quickly. So quickly, if you look at an org chart, right? You can't even keep up with an org chart of and how much information is being presented to us today is almost overwhelming in a lot of different ways. So how are you keeping up with everything that's coming in front of you? I think it's never been more challenging to be a leader. And also on the flip side, the playbook that you've probably learned up until this point is no longer going to be relevant moving forward.
Yeah, so how do you advise these leaders then to balance that, the embrace of the new technology, which clearly can help you do, some things you can do much faster with AI. There are other things you
Mm,
can do much better with AI. And we can talk a little
hmm.
bit about that as well.
Yeah,
But then in addition, you're right. You still have to have the human in the loop. You still and we as humans crave interaction with other human beings. So how do you help them strike that balance?
it's about understanding, as business owners and as entrepreneurs, we can get excited and we can tend to focus on chasing shiny objects.
Oh
We
yeah.
want things to be we want things to be done
Squirrel.
immediately.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, squirrel. We want things to be done immediately. So what I help people do is really slow down to speed up because
Mm.
we want things to move so quickly. So really focus on what is the major constraint in your business right now that we need to focus on for this quarter. So for example, we're in quarter one of 2026. What is the number one priority that is going to save you the most time or growth this month? And we're just going to focus on that. We're not going to focus on two, three different strategic imperatives. We're going to focus on this one thing that is going to move the needle most. Everything else, additionally, is just noise.
Yeah, that's so wise because so many people try to have two or three or four priorities. And, the statistics are pretty clear. If you have more
Hmm.
than two, you have
Hmm.
none.
Exactly, exactly. And I think anyone who's been in business and has been in those strategic decision making situations and building out OKRs and business plans, there's only likely three to five things that you can achieve every single year when you
Yep.
break it down. There's nothing else that you can do additionally. If you can get two or three things, four things done in a year, that's a success. Be narrow. You have to be narrow. And I think that's the big part that's missed with a lot of people is that you can be really wide with your focus, but if you bring and narrow the focus, the outcomes will you deliver will have a better output.
Yeah. So what's the process that you go through to pick that one thing? Because that's really hard because so many of us have, oh, I've got 100 ideas.
Yeah, yeah, it's that's where the having the conversations and understanding where you're meeting people at, what are the biggest challenges that the business is currently facing, zooming out and understanding where the business has come from, how has it evolved, and recognizing what is under different pillars of the organization, what is going to move the needle the most. There's a lot of exploratory conversations and understanding exactly where they're coming from. And I think you can see things on paper, they can tell you where things are struggling, but I think that's where the power is in having those conversations and diagnosing exactly what it is that is the biggest constraint based on the conversations you have. So that usually comes through a strategic session, 60, 90 minutes, depending on the scope of things. And then from there, you can map out what we're going to be working on in that first quarter. And then you work on quarterly sprints from that point on and making sure that you're narrow during each of those quarters.
So do you take a longer view of the business to, set some sort of, 3 year, 5 year sort of, strategic direction before you back up and say, okay, now this is what we're going to work on this quarter?
Yeah, so typically you want to have a North Star. So a North Star is if everything's going right, if you're happy with the progress, and we're talking, Steve, in a year's time, February 2027, what would that look like in your eyes?
Okay.
So if it's revenue we're focused on, if it's profit that we want to focus on, or if it's the leadership team or the owner working less hours, then we're identifying that as an immediate priority. So it's understanding what sits under those typical North Stars or those first year goals, 2 year goals, 3 year goals, and everything underpins and sits from there.
Okay. And how does AI fit into that? How does that balance things out?
Mm. It's a great question, and I think it depends again on the organization because everyone has a different level of understanding and comfort of it as well. You're seeing a lot of AI to your point around human in the loop. It's an end-to-end process. You still have to prompt it and get an output and then have the human to validate everything as well. So AI is a simple way to look at what are the most repetitive tasks that you're currently doing that's a low revenue or low output or something that you don't enjoy doing, right? Typically,
Yeah.
you're going to avoid what you don't enjoy doing. So is there a workflow or is there an automation that you can do to support that? That's where the magic of AI comes in to help eliminate that or speed up that process. It's not about always eliminating it, it's to help push that experience in the right direction to give you acceleration.
Yeah. So yeah, there's certainly, that low-hanging fruit with
Mm,
AI. An
hmm.
awful lot of people, it's I don't like doing that, or I'm not very good at it, or it has less value perhaps than some of the other
Correct.
things that you could do. I'm curious,
Where,
do you go ahead?
I was going to say, where do you see with the clients, partners you work with, where do you see the most value immediately in your experience?
Well, I think a lot of people are using it for those sort of, I'll say, mundane tasks of replying to
Mm,
emails or creating
hmm.
content or, doing
Hmm.
some writing for you, those kinds of things. The thing
Hmm.
that we're really trying to stress with our clients is to use the
Hmm.
AI as a thinking partner.
Mm,
And rather than just um, say, give it a simple task to do, actually
hmm.
engage in a conversation and say,
Hmm.
I want to work on this problem, or I want to work in this
Hmm.
direction. Um,
Hmm.
Suggest 3 to 5 different ways I could approach this problem, or give me three
Hmm.
or five different ways, directions I could go to help me do this better.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
our experience is that um, it's surprising in the number of different paths that it would suggest that I would never have thought of. And of course, I still get to use my intelligence because I get to select which of those 3 to 5 directions. Or maybe I'll say, I like this part of this idea and I like this part of this idea. Can you put those two together and see what it comes
Hmm.
up with? Right.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good point, and I think one of the bad habits, and I think a lot of other people may have gotten into this, is defaulting to going to chat or whatever their large language model is to use their intelligence before your own
Yeah.
in a lot of, yeah. So I got into a bad habit of that and quickly changed that. The ideas need to be from me first, and it supports the thinking. It's a thought partner to help accelerate and give different ideas. So that's the habit that I see people forming, which is not great and something that I've advised people myself because I've slipped into it as well. You just default to thinking, I'll just let someone else do it. And that doesn't build any resilience, doesn't build any intelligence. It just gets you into poor habits.
Yeah. And the same thing is true. One of my daughters teaches writing
Mm,
trying to help her students, do the creative part first, right?
hmm.
Do the thinking yourself. And you
Hmm.
may be able to ask, like, if I do some writing, I may ask
Mm,
the AI to critique the writing. Where
hmm.
could don't change it, but where could I have
Mm,
been more clear? Or where
hmm.
could I have been more concise? Or, maybe, there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can suggest, if you had a writing critic,
Hmm.
what are ways that I can improve it? Don't do it for me. Just suggest,
Yeah.
hey, in this paragraph, it seems like you could have been more concise. Or in this paragraph, it's not clear where you're going with this, or the flow is not exactly the way it should be, right? Um,
Hmm.
and then I rewrite it, right?
Hmm.
Rather than asking it to write it for me.
Mm. Yeah, and I think it's an important exercise that you need to really train it on being stringent in the outputs that it has as well and really pressure testing. One thing that I've done with it as well, the large language models are taught to validate your feelings. So a lot of what you share can become your echo chamber. However, a prompt that I add to everything now is give me a response as a CEO. So making sure that it's always coming from a lens of not soothing me, but critiquing me in a positive way to help elevate my thinking. So that's been really helpful and something that I suggest to clients because it can get a lot of self-soothing remedies if you continue to ask it the right questions.
That's right. Yeah. You can suggest things like, you know, don't, you know, be critical and use
Hmm.
critical thinking when evaluating my thoughts
Hmm.
and,
Hmm.
suggest, um, maybe better alternatives. Another one that somebody
Correct.
suggested to me, which I really like, is take a worldview.
That's
is
why
a
I
is
like that.
is a
Yeah.
really interesting way of
Mm.
um, asking the AI to sort of help me break out of my thinking,
Hmm.
right? I mean, we're talking here about, how do you be a leader in this age of
Mm.
AI, right?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
so, and being a thought leader is an important part of that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, how do you feel
Yeah.
about using AI for to help with communication of ideas? Because I remember when I was learning about leadership and
Hmm.
communication, one of the favorite things that I learned was the
Mm.
biggest problem with communication by a leader is the illusion that it has happened.
Mm. Mm. Clarity is communication. And I love that quote. And communication is the number one skill a leader should have, and something that I continue to critique and work on. Communication is something you can never perfect in a lot of different ways. And when I talk about communicating, it's not just verbally, it's how you take in information as well. Listening is one of the most underrated and underappreciated skills of a leader. Because as a leader, you naturally think that you have to be communicating out. However, when people want to be heard, you then have to put yourself in their situation and provide empathy, psychological safety, and truly listen to the words that are being spoken to you to help you understand where the person is coming to you. And your role as a leader is to firstly acknowledge that and understand and help remove the obstacles that are presented as a challenge to them to help them move forward. And that's the simplicity of leadership in a lot of different ways that often isn't spoken about.
Yeah, that's really great. The whole idea of, listen first to make sure you really understand what they're saying to you. But
Hmm.
because again, as leaders, we're very often just we're ready to respond. We listen not to understand, but we listen to respond.
One of my biggest learning experiences as a leader when I first came a leader many, many years ago was exactly that. I was under the understanding that in order for me to be a leader, I needed to be the smartest person in the room. That I had to have a response for every single question that was raised. If someone was sitting down in front of me, I'm formulating my response as you're talking to me, yet I'm not really listening to you because I'm already thinking, all right, so what do I need to say right here, right now that is going to show that I'm earning my leadership?
Right. And that I know enough that you should respect me as a leader. Somehow
Hmm.
if I don't tell you what to do, then
Hmm.
somehow I'm not leading. Uh,
Exactly, and exactly. And I think that's a big part of leadership and the shift that we're seeing in a lot of different ways is that leadership is a lot more vulnerable, where we're returning to human-centered leadership and acknowledging that you may not have all the answers, and that's okay as a leader. It's showing people that you're also human, you make mistakes. You're going to acknowledge that if you don't have the answer, you can go get it yourself. And that's a huge, huge part. And I think people are really connecting with that. And at the end of the day, people are wired for connection. And that's what we want to come into work is to connect with people and to help people move forward at the simplest level.
yeah, that and we are and as animals, as
Hmm.
creatures,
Hmm.
we really yearn for that connection. We live in
Hmm.
community. We
Hmm.
thrive in community. It's
Hmm.
and that comes from evolution, right? that we were
hmm
not the strongest beings in the forest or the plain or wherever it was that we lived, right? It was, we survived because we were in community and we could help each other.
hmm
So yeah. So I understand you have a free gift you would like to offer to the listeners. Tell us about that.
Yes, so as part of my own leadership journey, I have enjoyed the process of writing. It's something that I've really become to like and enjoy. And I'm not the greatest writer, but I believe I'm becoming even better. And over 2 years ago now, I decided to do something a little bit uncomfortable, and I started sharing my thoughts on LinkedIn around leadership. And I mostly write around leadership and future of work and different things that I see. So that's been a fun experience sharing content for the last 2 years. And through that, I decided to launch my own newsletter, again, compressing different things that I see and sharing insights from a worldview, from my own experience. So feel free to check that out. You can grab a free copy. It's free for anyone to join. You can sign up at 𝐏𝐫𝐶oaching.com.
Great. And is that the best way for people to reach out to you, or is it LinkedIn, or what's the best way if people want to learn
To,
more?
yeah, to learn more about me, my website, Chris March Coaching, as I shared, or through LinkedIn, feel free to drop me a line there. I share content once or twice a week, as I mentioned. So feel free to connect with me there also.
Great. And that concludes our show. So thanks so much to my guest, Chris March, the a COO who has turned executive coach and advisor. I hope you learned something about how leadership is changing in 2026. I know I did. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to the Profit Minds podcast. This is your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch. Please visit www.profitminds.net for other episodes or to contact me. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others. Thanks for listening. Have a grateful day.